the Illawarra Steelers and the St George Dragons were now kind of merged together into the one entity. But it would have been kind of difficult, Kurt, and a few of the guys that I've interviewed, like Rod Wishart and Brad Mackay, Nathan Blacklock, have all kind of said that it was a bit awkward kind of when they came together, because I feel like these days players are a lot more friendly with opposition players because they're in camps in pre-season where where Queensland and New South Wales are trying to earmark stars of the future. They obviously play representative football with each other, and there's a bit more of a relationship outside of football. You just need to see players that stay on the field and shake hands with opposing players after a game. I don't know if it was necessarily the same in 1998 or 1999. So yeah, there might have been some kind of lukewarm relationship between these these two teams, but it kind of feels a little bit like, I don't know if anyone's seen Remember the Titans, but when in that movie that stars the great Denzel Washington, one of the best sport movies ever made, by the way, when the two schools are forced to kind of merge, they kind of you've got the black kids that are out in the middle of the ground, and then you've got the white kids that are kind of walking across. I kind of felt like that's what it would have been like with the Dragons. Like they I don't know. I wouldn't say there would have been ill will or ill feeling towards each other, but I think it just would have been a bit of awkwardness because Nathan Brown has said in interviews that St George were kind of the city boys, guys like him, like Nathan Brown, who I think he lived in Cronulla at the time, went surfing, Anthony Mundine, Lance Thompson, those kind of guys were all kind of city guys, whereas the Illawarra players were seen to be a bit more country, like they lived south of Wollongong, they liked that relaxed lifestyle, so there definitely was some teething pains early on, Kurt. Yeah, and it's, I guess, interestingly as well, is that I can give it a bit of insight on that too, in the fact that as a child, I lived in St George and lived and breathed, and my family all played for Renown and Hurstville United and all that. But at the same time, my father, on my dad's side, he grew up in Wollongong, and for many years, my grandmother lived down, and she's passed away now, but we would spend a lot of time down in Wollongong as well with aunties and uncles on that side. And even then, like, Wollongong was a bustling ocean country town that was still secluded, and to get there, like, it was long before the beautiful highways down with the scenic lookouts and all that stuff. Or if you're going my way, you had to go through Appin Road and down through Mount Ousley and all that stuff. It was still by itself, like its own city. Look, I have no doubt there would have been players early on that felt a tad alien, and I guess a lot of them would have came from the Steelers side to me. But then you got a guy like Brad Mackay, who spent sorry if my dogs are barking in the background. Barry, shush, mate. Spent all that time at St George, and then eventually wound up at Illawarra, and then kind of maybe eased some tensions over a few beers, linking guys together. But 100%, like, you just imagine in preseason, like I said before, someone like Chock Mundine from the mean streets of Redfern, who ends up being a world-famous boxer and rapper with a song in the 2024 Rugby League Hottest 100, if you don't mind, on the 81stminute.com. But then against and the complete opposite in this kid, like this good-looking kid, Trent Barrett. I mean, if he could talk, he'd be in Hollywood. But Trent Barrett's never been that kind of bloke. He's from Temora. He's humble and quiet, and he plays his football a certain way. You can just imagine, like, Chock versus Barrett at training, and Barrett trying to, get into the grind of this, and people telling him, "You're the halfback." Even though I guess there was still some pushes for Rodwell being in the squad as well from maybe that side of the faction. It would have taken someone like Barrett with his personality a while to get a grip on what was happening and unfolding. And it's funny that before you said with the squad, the 25-man squad, with so many good young players coming through the Steelers, I wonder hypothetically how many older Dragons players, got a pass into that first squad where maybe a couple of those younger Steelers forwards that didn't get in. I don't know if they go any further in 99, but maybe it prolongs their finals campaigns in the next couple of years. But, yeah, it would have been really weird for a lot of those players. Yeah, I think it would have been. And the thing is, Barrett was never a halfback. Like, I think he did a decent job in 99 and through half of 2000 before Mundine left, but he was never a halfback. He never played that position previously. Like, he'd been a running 5'8". So the Dragons effectively had two running 5'8s kind of in their side, and I think it's credit to both him and Mundine that they're able to put their differences aside, and yeah, as you mentioned, Kurt, two very different personalities. Mundine was brash, he was confident, he was a little bit arrogant, with that famous quote of him saying that Laurie Daly and Brad Fittler were running on old legs, and like he believed in himself, whereas Trent Barrett wouldn't go as far as saying he didn't believe in himself, but he was someone that, from a country town, he was, a lot more respectful, like one of those guys, didn't speak unless spoken to, and obviously found his voice kind of later in his career and became a captain and leader of the Dragons. But at that stage, he'd only been in first grade for 3 or 4 years, so he was still only about 20 or 21, and I think it's indicative of what a great player he was, that when Mundine left, he obviously shifted back into his that favoured 5'8" position, and he won the Dally M Player of the Year award for a team that didn't, and that's when the Dally M's weren't a joke like they are now, for a side that didn't play finals. So, a really, really interesting kind of time period, Kurt, and I think I guess the lack of continuity and maybe a bit of frustration, players maybe being a little bit unhappy, players unsure of their future, where they were going to play. Even the coaching staff, like the Dragons didn't settle on a coach. It was David Waite and Andrew Farrar as co-coaches, which, I don't think's really been done much before in first grade, if ever. And I think that was kind of, you could see that reflected in the results for the Dragons. I've got the 1999 season in front of me, Kurt, and the first kind of month of the season, you see flashes of what this side could be. And as you mentioned, round one, they play Parramatta in a double header at Stadium Australia, which before the grand final was the record crowd for a rugby league game in this country. It was 104,583 against a very good Parramatta side that had that famous semi-final against Canterbury the previous year that they were looking to put behind them, and they actually got within a game of the grand final in 99 as well. Parramatta, coached by former St George coach Brian Smith, and the Dragons scored tries courtesy of Tracy and Thompson. But Lee Murphy was at fullback, Mark Coyne was in the centres, there was no Luke Patton, Sean Timmins was on the bench. They were still trying to kind of work out what the best made the best lineup would look like for the Dragons. And then from round one, we morph into round two. The Dragons kind of skipped out to a handy lead, but much like had happened kind of 9 months earlier, the Dogs were able to reel them in at Cogra and win 24-18. So at that stage of the season, Kurt, you're kind of sitting 0-2. You've been described as like this. The media were kind of saying, "Oh, this could be a super club. This could be a super team." You've got the fan base of the St George fans. You've got the quality of young talent coming through the Illawarra region. You've got 25 players that have come from two clubs. But in the first kind of fortnight of the season, admittedly against two good clubs, the grand finalists from 1998 in round two, and then in round one, a side that got within a game of the grand final and had a very, very, very good regular season. The Dragons kind of looked out of sorts, and like I think when you look at this season, the first kind of 8 or 9 weeks, or maybe even the first 10 weeks of the season, looked very different to the next kind of 15 or 16 weeks for the Dragons. So I think there were those kind of teething pains early on for the Dragons, but once they kind of found a little bit of rhythm and they beat Canberra down in Canberra, where Blacklock scores that try late and Bartram's able to curl the conversion in, it kind of gave them confidence. I know they lost to South the following week. South beat them at the SCG the following week, but after that, they really seemed to kind of kick on. The confidence was brimming, and this wasn't just a side that kind of battered sides into submission like we've seen the current St George Illawarra side do under Anthony Griffin to a lesser extent, but more so under Shane Flanagan this year. This was a side they played teams off the park, Kurt. Like We'll get into more specifics of games, but that 44-2 drubbing of Canberra at Cogra, where Nathan Blacklock and